Super excited to be with you today. Happy 4th of July weekend. Hope you guys are getting your rest today and had a fun-filled time. We are spinning off the 4th of July holiday, and we are talking about financial freedom today.
Yes, I'm so excited. I mean, this is a topic that comes up a lot in financial education, which just posing the question, of course, as Americans, we live in a free country, but, if your money controls your decisions, your time, and your peace of mind, are you really free? And
That's
if not,
right.
and if this is what's happening, what can we do to get you financial freedom in the next 6 months? So, our conversation is going to be centered around defining financial freedom and figuring out how can we get you to attain your level of financial freedom in 6 months, because it is possible. And we're going to dive right in.
We're going to dive right in. So the first question I want to talk about, and at SteadyWorth, so just to introduce ourselves, I'm Laura.
Eh,
I'm a life and leadership coach. And this is my husband, Gabe, the finance nerd / CFP. We're both co-founders of SteadyWorth, which is a financial education company where we help regular, everyday people build wealth, build financial freedom, get clear on their vision and goals. And we're super excited to be here. If we haven't said that already. So at SteadyWorth, we say that wealth means that your money is making money.
Well, I think, I would say creating wealth. Yeah.
Creating wealth. Okay. But your money is basically essentially making money. So what's our definition of financial freedom? Let's just start with the basics.
Well, I mean, I think when I think of financial freedom, for me personally, I think it's, controlling your time more. And of course, you need to have more money to control your time. Depending on what type of job you have, a lot of jobs require you to be there for a set amount of time, and you may or may not like your job. And, so I feel like, when you're getting into the financially free realm, at least for me, it's like, hey, I'm at a job that I like, or I'm running a business, a company that I'm able to contribute to the world, the type of work that I like to do, I'm getting paid for it. But I also have the flexibility to do the things that I want to do the way that I want to do them. And I mean, what I mean by that, let me say, like, not everything is perfect, but it's like, hey, I can also pursue my health goals. I can pursue my family goals. I'm pursuing business goals. And so I look at financial freedom as just, it's a form of living life mostly on your own terms.
Yes. And I would add to that personally, I think, and we talked about this a little bit before we went live today, is there's an aspect of financial freedom that's very tactical and money related. And then there's an aspect of financial freedom that's mindset, habits, system related, right? So like, how often are you stressing about money? We talked about at the beginning, like how much does money control your decisions and your habits and your peace of mind, right? And so I think there is a big element of financial freedom that has to do with your mental state and your emotional state, which we're going to talk about today as well. And I think it's two parts. So you can focus, you can have all the money in the world and not be financially free in your mind and struggle and stress about money all the time. So we want to make sure that you're doing both. And I think for us at SteadyWorth, it is both. So how can we
Absolutely.
help you get your mind right and your money right?
Absolutely. Well, and that's why at SteadyWorth we have a life and leadership coach and somebody who focuses on finances, because, money and life are the same. And so, and it's two-part. It's not just about the money aspect, but it's also about the life and the mind and the implementation aspect as well.
And so one of the first things we kind of ask people, and I'm going to just interrupt briefly, if you are watching this now live and or later after we've posted this, what is your definition of financial freedom? We would love to know. So drop that in the chat. Give us some ideas about what it means to you, because it does really mean something so different to everyone. Like you said, it's on your terms. So what does that look like for you? And so before we go too much deeper down that hole, why do you feel like so many people think financial freedom means do nothing and sit on a beach?
That is as I'm thinking about that right now, and I just think, that's the common misconception. I feel like that's the elephant in the room, and I don't know honestly where that comes from. I don't know if that's somebody, if that was just how maybe retirement is painted, and so people think, well, one day I'm going to retire and then I can just do whatever I want and just sit on the beach and sip mai tais or drinks with umbrellas in them. But you know, I think that most people who do that after a while they get bored has been the common thing. And I think that even coming back from 2 years of just living in Miami, where we were living right down the street from the beach, we're at the beach multiple times a week. Going to the beach is fun. I really enjoyed it. I mean, we got in the beach just as much as we wanted. I mean, of course, there are some days where it's raining and we wanted to go, but I mean, we hit the beach. We hit it hard. But being on the beach just wasn't the end all be all. I'm still like was excited to be running a business where I'm pursuing purpose, pursuing goals in life, and adding value to the world. So I'm not exactly sure where that comes from, but I feel like that's a huge elephant in the room. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is I think we're getting into people as a species lean so much towards convenience and trying to make things more convenient, less effort, less like if you just even look at our landscape right now in the world, like we have DoorDash, we have someone will go pick up takeout for us. We have someone who will go pick up we can order groceries online and someone will go pick up our groceries. And this has evolved over time, right? We used to be making our food at home, growing our food at home, and we've slowly moved to a more convenient place. And so I think there is this idealized version of freedom that means I have no responsibility, and no responsibility is great because then I have no accountability to anything, and that's actually my definition of freedom. And I think when you really get there, or when people get there to that place where they have no more quote unquote responsibilities, they don't feel financially strapped. I think a lot of people just they don't realize that responsibility and purpose go together. Like they're not, you don't get one without the other. You can't have a life full of purpose without responsibility. It's making me think of, we didn't talk about this earlier, but there's a line in Spider-Man where it says, with great, oh my gosh, with great talent comes great responsibility, or something like that. Something related to that. I wish I had the quote off the top of my head. And I think that's true about life. Like with you got to have some level of purpose connected, and that requires responsibility. And so
I
um
think also, when you see and in with you when you're pursuing purpose, you have that responsibility. That's why I think you see so many people who are wealthy, and I mean, some of the most famous ones, and they could walk away from work at any given point. They're doing steady worth's definition of wealthy, which is means their money's making money, and yet they still want to work because they feel that sense of purpose and that sense of responsibility. I mean, Warren Buffett just announced that he's retiring at the end of this year at the age of 95. Now, so he just basically skipped retirement.
right.
He was like, I'm not, like he basically skipped retirement. Like 30 years ago at 65, he just like, I'm just rolling a whole new career. And like, I mean, and some people say that, I mean, it's a fact that he made most of his money post 65. I mean, he was already a billionaire, but he became like richest man in the world, like after in retirement.
Yeah.
And so and I think about, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey. I mean, and it goes on. Kim Kardashian. Whatever. I mean, these are people who don't need to work anymore,
Yeah.
and they're still deciding to work because it comes up. It gives them a sense of purpose, allows them to add something of value to the world. I mean, I find that interesting. People who can sit on the beach and do nothing, but literally, when you look at some of these people's schedules, they're working harder than the average everyday person. They're putting in way more than 40 hours of work a week.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's because it means something to them. Like I've heard Warren Buffett talk about what he does. I mean, he genuinely loves what he does. He does not. I'm curious to see what happens when he retires. He'll probably still just do his own thing, because
Or
he's
be an
developed this,
advisor or something.
or be an
Yeah.
advisor or something. Yeah, but I think there is a big element of being financially free that includes like having some level of purpose and responsibility. And so at least that's our belief over here at Steady Worth. Curious what your guys' thoughts are for those watching. What do you think? Why do you think people think financial freedom means doing nothing, or just sitting on a beach, or traveling everywhere across the world. Like what do you think the source of that is, or what would your idea be? Um so what is the difference between being rich, being wealthy, and being financially free in your opinion?
Well, I think, rich you can be rich just with a high income. And we see this a lot with, people who are athletes or just have an amazing job. I mean, all of a sudden you're making 250, 350, a million, couple million, all of a sudden you're rich, you're rich. But also, once those people lose those jobs and get separated from them, and we see this a lot with athletes, most majority of athletes within 5 years of leaving the league are worse off. They're like worse than being broke. They're in debt. Like, it's
Yeah,
bad. And they don't. And the thing is that the jobs that most of them are applicable for is nothing like the jobs that they were getting paid for when they're on the field, because there's only so many sportscaster positions that you could be on TNT and ESPN. There's only so many of those jobs. And unless you're very talented at that, not even those jobs make as much money
that's
as if
right.
they were making on the field. And so, so rich is having a high income. Wealth, like we just mentioned, is having when your money is making money. And so, and I think, that's one part of wealth. I'd say the other part of wealth is in your mind. Like,
Yeah,
if Bill Gates somehow lost all of his money, or if Elon Musk somehow lost all of his money, it wouldn't just be they. I don't believe that they would just turn homeless. They would be able to make it all back again, because they have a mindset for creating things and creating wealth. Whereas somebody who has a talent that has an expiration date on it, such as, if you're a football player, like, you only can run passes into the end zone for so many years, and then you have to step down and do something else. And so, and so you haven't if you haven't developed a mindset that allows you to replicate that income, it could be over with. And so that's why it's very important that when people who are rich have high incomes, they're making sure they're getting that money into things that are creating money. When it goes to freedom, once again, I think that everybody has their own level of, everything that I think that they have their own definition of freedom. Mine would be around time, is that, I want to be able to control my time in doing things that I love and that I enjoy. And so I think that, the freedom aspect brings in the time. And I think that's also why in corporate America, they talk about so many people having golden handcuffs. There's nothing about having a handcuffed on feels like free, but maybe it feels a little bit different if they're gold and they're not stainless steel. And golden handcuffs, meaning that these people who are making a lot of money are tied to their job, because, they either have stock options or incentive bonuses that keep them there for a certain amount of time. And so in theory, they're rich. They possibly have assets that are investing in assets that are making them wealthy, but at the same time, they're not what you would probably call free, because they're probably tied up into a bunch of meetings that they don't even want to be in.
yes. Recovering corporate consultant over here. I mean, I would agree. I spent a good portion of the last like 4 years before Steady Worth working at a job that, for the most part, was actually a really great job. Like, I had great benefits, I was getting great pay. My job description was very flexible. I was able to define it myself. I was able to, I had a lot of great coworkers that I worked with. So, like, there were a lot of things about that role that was really great for me. And I will say, like, on the subject of defining financial freedom, I think there were elements there that were missing for me that really matter to me as a person, like value wise. Like, my values are to, one of the reasons why I got into change management to begin with is because I really like to help people change and bring their best self to life. And so when I was doing that in the organizations and I was having a lot of struggle doing that, I felt like I was almost not free, because I wasn't able to do what I really, really wanted to do, was to help people make change and to help make people make change for the better. I think there's another element of, there was an element of freedom, time freedom there. But I think the stress of having to, like, if I lose this job, or if this job changes, or if I want to make a leap somewhere else, like, I didn't really feel like I could, because I didn't feel like I was going to be able to find anything quote unquote better in the marketplace. And those things stressed me out, which kind of goes back to that element of, like, I felt like I was kind of tied, hot handcuffs to this job. And I didn't really have the mental or emotional freedom either because that job was actually draining my energy. So,
Yeah,
like well, yeah, go ahead and I can.
I think we're and I think that, it's becoming more popular where some people are even getting into, hey, I'd rather have a job that makes a little bit less money and do something that I'm passionate about than having a job that makes a ton of money and do something that I absolutely hate. And
Yeah.
so, and I think there's a lot of value in that because it's like when we think about it, it's like our job is our whatever we're doing for work. I mean, that's a lot of what most people spend majority of their day on. If you're just working what we define as a regular full-time job, I mean, that's 40 hours a week. That's a lot to be
And
at a
most
place
people
that
are
you don't like
working
being at.
or most people are working minimum 40 hours a week.
Right.
Not necessarily, most people are working more than that. So it's like you got to be enjoying what you're doing.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think just kind of sum up all the things that I was saying. I think for me, financial freedom is about aligning my time and my money to my values, like my core values, things that really matter to me. I think there's an element of financial freedom that is about time, money, and energy. Like, where is my, like, I felt like creativity is a big value of mine, and that job just kind of like sucked it all out of me. So I didn't have any time to like be creative or think. And so I think even going down to that value level on freedom in general can help you even expand what financial freedom looks like to you and how you might be able to organize your money in a way that supports that value, those values, and that lifestyle. So those are just some thoughts there. Anything else?
I think that's it for that one.
Cool. So, what do you think is the most misunderstood truth about financial freedom that you wish more people knew?
I mean, I think we just answered it like one, which was kind of the elephant in the room is that, financial freedom is more than just doing nothing. And I won't beat that one because we already beat it already, but it's just like, I think that most people think that, oh, when I have this, almost like the fire movement. And sorry if you're a part of the fire movement, I'm not trying to get on your line, but, and if you don't know what the fire movement is financial independence, retire by 40. And so if you talk to anybody who's in this movement, and I just learned about this movement like a couple years ago when we went to FinCon, and so the people inside of the fire movement, they're like, hey, I have my fire number is, and so it might be 2.5 million or 5 million or whatever it is, and they know that with that number they can have, once they achieve that amount of assets, they can draw down a certain amount of money each year out of their assets to live off of, and that money keeps regenerating itself. And so without them running out of money over the course of not working for the rest of their life. But the thing is that even inside of, the fire movement, that they're calling themselves financial independent, they're retired by 40, which is considered an early retirement. They still have confines that they are living inside of, so, or bumpers, they have boundaries so that they don't lose all their money. If you all of a sudden do financial independence, retire by 40, and then you start buying a Ferrari every year and leasing one and flipping that over, you're gonna run out of money pretty quick, and in a few years you won't be independent anymore. So if they start, just, so then it's like you have to then define what it is that you want to do with your time, because as 2.5 million, I mean, it's a good amount of money, but it's not enough just to go crazy on for the next however many years, especially with inflation, costs going up, and just how things are.
And
So I,
uncertainty. Yeah.
yeah, so I think that's one of the most, things is that it's like people who have money and they are quote unquote financially free. I think one of the things is that they still have boundaries that they live inside of in order to keep that independence. Because if you start violating those boundaries, even when your money's making money, things can start to get a bit rough for you.
Yeah, and it makes me think of the book that you have on the coffee table downstairs, Discipline Equals Freedom. And there's like a level of discipline that comes with the fire movement that is required, or really anything financially related requires discipline and boundaries and habits, right? It's not just like, hey, I can overflow, but I do think there's an element where you can get to a place where you're adding value in a way that matters to you and a way that regenerates your bank account, your investments and things like that in a way that creates freedom over time. But I'm even thinking about like the Jeff Bezos, the Elon Musk, like they're creating value. They're not necessarily, and which is creating wealth for them. And so they're not necessarily going to stop doing that anytime soon.
Right. Absolutely.
And so it's a little bit of a mindset shift. It's like, let me trade my time for money versus let me see how I can create value in the world and create wealth that way.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. So, what does, we've touched on this a little bit, but what does freedom mean to you?
To me?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so just for I would say, once again, for me, I feel like freedom is having more control over your time, to work on things that you like to do, and so, I don't feel like freedom means not working. I mean, I've had some great projects that I mean, we've been busy working on different things, and it even though I was busy, I still felt that I was in a sense, I still felt freedom at the same time. I'm like, hey, every day I'm getting up, I'm excited about what I'm working on. Don't get me wrong. There are times I get up and I'm like, I am not excited to work on this today, but it's also the growing pains of growing a business, because it's almost like the misconception of entrepreneurship when you think a business owner gets to do all the stuff that they want to do and offload all the stuff that they're not good at and don't want to do. In the beginning phases, it does not work like that. You do
Right.
everything, all the stuff you do and don't want to do. And so I think that, freedom, for me, is being able to spend my time pursuing the things that I want to do. So steady worth is one of them. We've been working on this now since, I mean, I quit my job officially to pursue this in August of 21. So we're coming up, that's 4 years. And, but I mean, I will also say that this level of freedom that I would consider that I have in running a business, I have worked harder in the last 5 years, because as I started working on this idea about 18 months prior to leaving my job, I worked harder in the last, 5.5 years on this than I have, the from the beginning of my career on, until this happened, working on other stuff, just because, I consider it freedom, but also, I mean, we're here on Sundays. We do Sundays with Steadyworth. And so I'm giving up, going and you usually go to our favorite restaurant on Sundays and go get the $29 prime rib.
That's right.
Yesterday, we're working on different ideas, and it's a Saturday, 4th of July, you're shooting a YouTube video, and,
Yeah.
that's one of our favorite holidays. And we're usually at the beach on that day. So it's like, still in maintaining freedom, I mean, we're still putting in work. And so, but I think the big difference for us and it is that, but we're getting to choose, to create the way we want to create, putting our energy and what we want to put it in as far as with growing the business.
And what do you feel like is the key or the mindset that you hold as you're kind of going through this day to day? Like, what are some of the key things that you're thinking and feeling in order to maintain that mentality that you have?
Well, I mean, I think, the biggest thing is like, what is the main thing, because so if the bit if the of course we know the business is the main thing, and so I mean it's the main thing that I'm working on from day to day. So it's like, how can I continue to push this forward, to to continue to get it to make money, to continue to get more clients, to continue to have it add value first, because it's like you can't make more money and get more clients if it's not adding value, and then all of that turns back around is, how do I become a better Gabe? Because as I become a better Gabe, which allows me to be a better business owner, which allows me to add more value, which allows me to create a better company, which then allows me to get more clients, make more money. So it's all that thing. So it's like, so even in that freedom, and like I'm saying, why I say I'm working hard, it's not like that. It's just the work is just hustling, but it's like, it is like, hey, I may want to scroll Instagram, but actually I'm reading a book, so that when I'm on calls next week, I can have more things that I learned over the weekend that I'm providing more value, or that when I'm shooting my next YouTube video, it can be even more valuable than the last one, because I've learned something else that I'm also trying to, to present and reposition. So, I think that all those things working together.
Yeah, it's making me think. You're talking about books. I just got recommended this book by a colleague that I met with earlier this week, and the first part of it is talking about how, and we say this a lot on Steadyworth, and this is called The Energy of Money. It's by Maria Nemeth, PhD. So far, so good. I'm really enjoying it. But it talks about how there's like we're there is an energy associated to money, and it's connected with who we are, our lifestyle, how honest we are with ourselves about these different things, and how kind of being able to remove money blocks will help you, or being able to invest in yourself and invest in these different areas of your life all affects your money and your relationship with money. And so that was just something I was thinking I'll have more info on the book, but it sounds like someone else someone else has read that book and recommends it also. Yeah, it's a really good book. Um, and highly recommend, in terms of just, even if you're a person who has yet to define what financial freedom means to you, or is kind of fuzzy, or is maybe adopted what someone else might think is financial freedom, is a really good book to get started and to start thinking about your relationship with money and how you can kind of create and curate that over time as well, and create personal fulfillment. Um, so if someone said, I want financial freedom, what's the first question you would ask them?
I would ask them what their definition of financial freedom is. That I would ask them what that is, and I think that it's really important to get clear on what financial freedom means to you. And so it has to mean, it has to be very specific. It's like, does that mean I don't have to work? Does that mean I'm working on something that I want to work on? Does that mean I'm on the beach all day? I would ask them. We would work through what their definition of financial freedom is.
Yeah, and I remember one of our clients had that as their primary goal, financial freedom, and I think in working with you, they were able to make that definition even more concrete, because even if you don't have something right away that pops into your head, this is something that like requires like it always requires more thinking and more noticing in your environment, like what kind of experiences you want to create more of. And I think over time, getting clear on that financial freedom piece and that vision has really helped you help him put in financial systems and habits in place where he can actually go and attain that, right? And live according to that definition too. So it really is kind of like the starting point of anything tactical that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Cool. So how would you stay excited about your life while staying within your means and preparing for your future?
So that's one thing that we say at Steady Worth, is that, it's like we work to help people live a life that they're excited about today while living within their means and preparing for a financially responsible future that they're also excited about. And so, that's one of our definitions of, being a wealth builder, or, living financially free. And so I think that, once again, it's defining what are the things that are most important to you, because everything can't be, if everything's important, nothing's important. I forget who said that. It wasn't me, but I forget where I heard that from. But everything can't be important. So what are the most important things? And so I feel like, when you're working on that, then that's one of those ways. And I mean, along the road, there's sacrifices to be made as well. And so I think, getting comfortable with that, and also, just getting comfortable being uncomfortable. But I think the clearer that you can get on, hey, this is what's the most important, I want to work on this is my definition of financial freedom. You can, then it allows you to stay within your means. Because, for instance, like when I got clear on that, hey, Steady Worth is the most important thing, I want to, I would like to quit my job, I want to start Steady Worth. That kind of let me know, it's like, okay, well, when I'm saying yes to Steady Worth, then I'm also saying I'm probably not going to be going on as many vacations that I want to go on, because I'm probably going to need to put that money into other business budget things. See, that means also, we got married, I'm giving up my car, and we're going to share a car, which means that if the car is not available, one of us, likely me, is going to be in an Uber. And I don't really like taking Ubers, but but I don't want to have that car payment over my head. That also means that, I'm not going to just, randomly stop by the store and go pick up a bunch of clothes that I used to just stop by the store just because, out of, I don't know, pure boredom. But I mean, the wardrobe was just constantly always on rotation. And I
Yeah.
was like, that means I'm giving, other things like that up, because, hey, this is what I'm doing to stay within my means to also accomplish that goal. And we like to say, sometimes you're putting things on pause. You're not necessarily giving them up for forever, but but I also have to be clear on, hey, this is what's most important to me in this season, and these are things that I can actually pass on in this season as well.
Hey, Ken. Welcome from Australia.
Ken, welcome back.
Welcome, Rachel. Welcome, DK. Happy you guys are all here. If you're joining and you haven't left a comment, feel free to leave your name, where you're joining us from in the comments. We're about to head into Q&A. But excuse me. Yeah, so I think, some of the themes that I'm hearing us talk about through this live is really, obviously, you need to have some sort of clarity around what financial freedom actually means to you. And a lot of people don't, or they haven't thought about it, or they've adopted some other person's definition of it. And then I think the next piece there is, you don't want to get, or the next theme is like, you really don't want to get confused, right? Like, you don't want to, sorry, losing my train of thought a little bit here, but
I'll
like,
just hop in while you're getting it. It's like, you want to keep the main thing the main thing. I was just thinking about my mentor, Greg Frank. He one of the mentors that I have. He worked for 19 years, I believe it was, started his career, worked for 19 years for a company called Clorox. And then I want to say at about age 48, he felt a little bit burnt out, and then decided to he was like, I think I'm going to take a leave of absence because I just need to take a break. I feel burnt out. And then when he's on his leave, he was like, you know what? I don't think I want to go back to work. I think I have enough money to retire. So he was like, I'm going to just build out a financial plan for the next 60 years. I don't know if he said it was 60 or 80 years when he told me this. And then, and now he's in his late 50s. I want to say it is. I think he retired. This was back in like 2008 or so. I forget exactly what the year was. But the point being is that, like, Greg is retired, and he spends time with his grandkids. He travels. His wife. He spends time with his wife. He does all kind of stuff, but he doesn't do everything. But he still enjoys his life. I would consider him having attained. He's fully over his time. His days look exactly how he wants them to look. He gets to do whatever he wants to do, but also he still stays in a certain set of guidelines.
yes, yeah. So staying in a certain set of guidelines and making sure that you're clear on, what it is that you want, and how much it is, like how much
Yeah.
that lifestyle costs. Yeah. And then really just having some sense of purpose in that time and responsibility. So that may look different for everybody.
Yeah.
But kind of having whatever that level of responsibility and purpose is that makes that time meaningful.
Yeah. I'm curious to ask the chat, does anybody have an idea of what financial freedom looks like to them, and if they would like to share? I love, there is no right or wrong answer. I love hearing what, different people's goals, and how, when, what that financial freedom, what means to them, and what it would look like for them.
Yeah, same.
We'll put that in there. If you want to throw that in there, go ahead, and we can key the next thing that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what's one thing that someone can do today to move closer to financial freedom, even if it's with very little?
Okay, I would say, I want to give a couple things, because I feel like, if the title of this is financial freedom, is attaining financial freedom within 6 months possible, and I think that you could definitely be on the road to attaining, if not there, within 6 months. Now, let's be clear here. Obviously, you have to have had some sort of income to be working on this, or you have to have some level of assets. Like, this isn't magic, like, you have
Budget.
to, like, yeah, you have to have, the money has to come from somewhere, right? And so, the first thing I would say is knowing your expenses is really important. You need to know how much money financially you need to support yourself each year. Yes, Ken, 1,000%. Stack those sats. Buy some Bitcoin. As like one of my biggest things is it. Buy some Bitcoin. Yes, I think that's one thing. I think the next thing is get clear on what life you want to live. Like, what does life look like for you? What are the things that really bring you value, the things that you really enjoy, and what would a life like that be for you? And I think, once you get clear on that, because, I think we were talking about this last week. I forget if it was the week before. It's like, it's hard to get somewhere. You can't, if you put in on Google Maps, like your destination, but you don't put your starting point, it's going to be almost impossible to get there if the map can't
Yeah.
see where you're currently at. So if we're talking about attaining financial freedom and you're not clear at where you're at, but you have all these other things, then it's like, first we got to get clear on where we're at so that we can know where we want to go. And so I think it's very important to define where we're at, look at, where it is we want to go, and then start building a plan to bridge the gap.
Yeah, one thing that this book has been talking about in the beginning is kind of like the benefits of truth telling, and how, it's talking mainly about people's relationship with money and how their relationship with money impacts all these other areas of their life. And one of the key things that it's talking about in the first 30 pages is the benefits of just telling the truth about your situation and not hiding it, avoiding it, being ashamed of it, or anything like that. And that's something that, I feel like is an underrated part of financial wellness, is just telling the truth. Like, you're not the only one who's been in debt. You're not the only one who, is scared of, money or this or that. Like, there's actually a lot of people out there who are going through these different emotions when it comes to money. So like, how can you tell? And she talks about how telling the truth actually creates space for you to make options to get out of that. Right. And I think we talk about that all the time. And that's what you're saying, is like, if you're
Absolutely.
not really honest about where you're at, it's going to be really, really hard to navigate or figure out what the right next step is for you to get to that vision.
And I think it's also important to, to get around a community or a group of people, or to have a mentor, a coach, a guide who can help you get there. I remember one time I was really upset. This was before I became a certified financial planner, before I got into finance. I was working in nonprofit. I'm speaking on the phone to a different mentor, and I was like, I was applying for this job. It didn't work. They didn't accept me. I'm already working at the job, but I'm applying for a different role. They accepted someone else, and the person just was like, hey, we need to get honest here. It's like, you're saying you want to accomplish this, you're working here. It's like, do you really have a path for your career? Because right now it looks like you're just chasing a bunch of great opportunities, but it's like you're not, there is not really it doesn't look like you're going, your resume is not
Yeah.
telling a story of what that somebody will be able to read in the next 10 to 15 years and say, I see how you got here. They're like, what is the main thing you want to focus on? And so, I had to be honest with myself. I'm like, hey, I'm not really happy with where I'm at. And maybe I'm just kind of going down this career path because I was already going down it. I
Yeah.
need to step back and really figure out what's going on, so through some reflection and introspection, finally got into finance and CFP. And there's a whole long other story that's not what this topic is about. But I just want to talk about how I had to really get honest with myself and be like, yo, this isn't this right here. This ain't it.
Yeah. Yeah. And not judge yourself. Just be like, hey,
Yeah.
this is a part of the process, right? And I think that's a really key part. Is I think we're so quick to judge ourselves, or, try and hide away from our friends or family some of the stuff that we did. And it's really, there's no, there's no need. Like, you can just look at the facts, right? And kind of figure out, okay, something that I use all the time is like, what would I say to a friend who was going
Right.
through this? Like, that always helps me be more kind to myself, because I'm usually my harshest critic. And my favorite thing that you say to me when I'm being hard on myself is, if you're going to beat yourself up, make sure to use a Q-tip.
I got that. I have a buddy who went through some AA programming, and his friend told him, and that's what, at one of the meetings, one of his
Yeah.
friends said that. It's like, hey, if you're going to beat yourself up, make sure you use a Q-tip and not a baseball bat.
Yeah, I love it. I've said that to so many people because I think it's helpful when you're kind of going through something, and you can't really be mad at yourself for not knowing, because no one taught us this. And depending on what your family situation was growing up, um, you're having some sort of principles or mindset being passed down to you. And so it's, it's fair that you don't necessarily know this stuff, or like how to create a vision for financial freedom. And now we're so inundated with social media, TV, we have this like idealized version of it, when, sometimes it's really simple for people. Like, I just want to spend as much time with my family as I possibly can. So it's like, okay,
Absolutely.
how can we do that? How can we set you up in a way where you can fulfill that? Or, I just really want to make a difference in my community. Like, okay, how can we set you up and get you clear on that? And so I only have one last question. I feel like we've answered it, but
Yeah.
I'm curious. Then we'll go into some Q&A. So if you guys have any questions specific to this topic or anything that we've said, you can drop them in the chat and we will answer them. So is it possible to attain financial freedom in 6 months?
I think it is. I think it is. I think the first part is attaining that definition first. Let's get clear on what the definition is, and then start working towards it. I feel like so many people have a goal, but it's, we always say a goal without a plan is just a wish. And so they
Yeah.
have this goal, but they're not technically working towards it. And so that's why I always say, I was just on a phone with someone yesterday, and we were talking about getting they were talking about getting an apartment, and I was like, hey, you should go look at some apartments in the next couple weeks, because then it becomes real to you when you start
Right.
looking at them. You're like, hey, this is how much they cost, this is what the area is. And as you go look at them, then all of a sudden you start to get a bit more inspired to like, hey, maybe I can work this out a lot quicker. Actually, I'm starting to get committed to this. And I think that's the same thing about getting clear on with your vision of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. If you don't ever sit down to it, then it's like, you just kind of keep putting it off. But once you actually get it there, it's like you start thinking, oh, hold on, maybe I can work through this. Maybe
Yeah.
this is something that I can accomplish. And so, but the thing is that if you sit down and write out your vision of what financial freedom looks like to you, and you're like, hey, I don't have money for this, but you're really serious about it, I'm guessing the next thing you're going to be like, yo, I'm about to like up my career set, update my resume, and get another job because I really want to do this.
Yeah.
And so that, there's two types of things. There's people who are like, no, that's not for me. I'm not going to do it. Then there's people who are like, hey, I'm about to take some action. I'm clear on what it is I need to do. I'm not happy with where I'm at, and I'm going to take the action that I need to take. And I think that when somebody starts taking action, going towards those things, you'd be surprised. I mean, I have a coach, Lee Taylor, that I work with every other week. And he says, in one of his sayings, I don't know if he came up with it or somebody else, but he says, people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what they can accomplish in a year.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of people underestimate what can happen in 6 months. I think in 6 months, a lot can happen if you start working towards it. And as somebody who went from like, hey, I'm living at home, I'm about to move out, start this business, quit my job, and do it. Like, I mean, we saw our lives change. I quit my job, started the business. We moved to Miami, and it happened in an 8-month period. But the thing is, I was putting action behind a lot of things,
Yeah.
pertaining to the business, and that momentum started carrying a bunch of things forward. But imagine if I was just like, I'm not even, if I hadn't even not ever done the stuff to start the business, when the opportunity came to move to Miami, there's
Yeah.
no way I could have went,
Yeah.
because I would have still been at my job. I wouldn't have had the freedom to leave.
Yeah.
And so the thing is that, you start working towards it. I think financial freedom is definitely attainable in 6 months. We actually have a 6-month coaching program that we actually walk people through how to start working on achieving their goals, becoming the best version of themselves within 6 months. We meet weekly with the
Yeah.
person. It's a group coaching program, and you can get a lot of freedom. You get your finances in order, you get your plans in order. You also, you get clear on what it is you're trying to achieve. You're around a group of people who are working to achieve like-minded goals, so they're cheering you on. Just because a lot of times when you get clear that you want to get to accomplish something, other people aren't clear about it. It could be a real lonely road. Like when I was starting a business, I only have one other friend who's a business owner who's working on it. So my friends who have jobs, they don't get what I was
Yeah.
trying to work on Steady Worth, and why all of a sudden I wasn't going out anymore, not spending money on this or that. And I'm literally at home grinding every day,
Yeah.
getting up at 5 a.m, working on this idea before I go to work. And so that's why it's so important to get around community and people who are like-minded, looking to achieve the same things that you're trying to achieve. A lot can happen in 6 months, way more than what the average person thinks can happen in 6 months.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you said that I just want to highlight is when you take action, you can catch a vision, right? So it's like when you're going to look at apartments, all of a sudden you can catch a vision for an apartment and you live in there and imagining your life, what it would look like if you lived in that apartment, which is probably more motivating than sitting down and looking at your budget originally and being like, okay, what can I mean, of course, that's a part of it, But, when you catch a vision about something and you start to imagine yourself living that vision out every day, that adds a whole nother level of motivation to your desire to put money in the right place, to start to align your goals, to start making sacrifices about things that you want to do and don't want to do, where you want to waste money, quote unquote, waste money. I mean, I've spent so many years just saying like, well, I don't want to miss out on this. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do this. And then, two, three, $1,200 later, I haven't missed out. And I'm still in the same position I am every day, working a job I don't like with an
Absolutely.
idea to start a business that I never did, that I never
Yeah.
made progress on because I didn't want to miss out or something like that. So
Yeah, and this is why test driving cars for people who sell cars is so powerful because they put you in the driver's seat of something that you want. You're driving it around and hey, I've
all of
heard
a
I've
sudden it feels
I've
real.
heard of people who taking people on test drives and they go, "Hey, let's drive to your house." And they let them pull in their driveway. It's like, could you imagine waking up in the morning and coming outside your driveway and this car is here? How does that make you feel? Or they'll, drive them to their job and then put
Yeah.
them in there, where's your parking space? Oh yeah, pull in there. Like, what would it feel like to, come out of work every day and you're hopping in this car? Like, but they're allowing them to actually visualize it. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, a lot of times those people go, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna need to work something out. I think I do need that, you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, so you want to get really clear. Let's take that vision for a test drive. You can be there
Yeah.
a lot quicker than what you think.
Absolutely. Any questions from our viewers today about financial freedom, about how to do it, about something you're going through, some challenge that you're having around this, or what is a common challenge that you might be having um around really living this out or taking steps forward?
Or it could just be even around overcoming limiting beliefs. I mean, we often talk to many people about that. It's like, maybe they have a limiting belief that, maybe financial freedom isn't for them, or they grew up in a house where, things were rough. And so, they were like, hey, I block out that thing because I just know I'm going to have to work the rest of my life. And so I think that not that financial freedom isn't working, but maybe it's not, working for doing a job that you're not excited about or something like that. So some people think happiness can be off limits to them when it really is attainable.
Yeah. I was just thinking about the gal we spoke to a few weeks ago who was part of the fire movement. Super. Let's see. Oh, we got some love. Thank you. Sade. I think that's Sade. Um, uh, I was thinking about when we were talking to that gal who she was actually she was in the fire movement. She
That's
had one of
financial independence, retire by 40 for those of you who
Yeah,
didn't
she
hear
had
this episode earlier.
her finances were in an excellent position. She was a teacher. She still had about 10 years left in her career. And she had won a free session with us because we had spoke at a conference and we kind of we raffled out a free one-on-one with us. And we were just asking her some really, like, her finances look great. We were like, okay, what are your questions? And she was like, well, should I keep my real estate? Should I not? And we kind of got into this conversation about like her vision for retirement. And we asked like, well, what would you like to do in your retirement? And she's like, well, I kind of treat my summers as like mini retirements. And we learned that she gets bored very quickly in the summer, and she'll start, like, she planned a triathlon every summer for like 15 summers or something crazy like that. Like, she just took on the role of planning this triathlon. And then, she had younger kids. So she's like, well, a lot of my time could be spent around, the kids and this, but she wasn't retiring for another 10 years. So by the time we had to kind of like help her visualize like what 10 years from now might look like, I was like, how old are your kids going to be? That she was like, oh, 20 and 2019 or something like that. So I was like, okay, so your life isn't going to necessarily revolve around your kids' activities. And I think she was able to walk away with some level of hey, I need to actually think about what my vision for retirement is, because it's like the money is there. And we ended up answering the real estate question sort of by default. Like, do you like managing the real estate? Do you like doing the tasks? Like, are the tasks, are the tasks something that you enjoy doing, or would you be better off just selling it? Like, I don't know that it'll make a huge difference or impact in your finances, but kind of just getting clear on what that is. For her, I think she left with a lot of questions and a lot of time to reflect. Does look like we got a question. Ken, only thing I would be worried about is to have enough money for retirement. I'm 50 and I want to enjoy myself, not live on noodles. We feel that. How do you plan that?
I would, I think, we have a budget video that walks through this, but I'd say the first thing to do would be to get clear on your budget. And just going to explain this really quickly in like 30 seconds. Like, this is high level when I say budget. So it's not like spreadsheets. I would literally go through and I would figure out, okay, what are my hard expenses? What are the things that I need to pay every month, no matter what? So this is, rent, mortgage, debt repayment, transportation. I figure out what all
Food,
those hard.
so you're not living on noodles.
Yes. Yes. So, yes, I would figure that out first. Then I would take my income. What is that amount? The hard expenses each month. I would take my income that hits your check, that hits your bank account every month, and I would minus it by my hard expenses, and then whatever you have left over, that's your miscellaneous spend. So, that's a very quick form of a budget. We have a video that goes over it on the YouTube channel, but I would get really clear on how much money I'm going through each month, and then I know you're into Bitcoin, you're pro Bitcoin. I would start figuring out how to invest some of that miscellaneous money that you have, so it's because it's like literally when you're 50. So it's like, okay, if I want to retire at 65, I have 15 years. So I need to start thinking, okay, these are my hard expenses. These are my survival things. So then when it comes to miscellaneous, how many dollars are going towards, living life and food and whatever else it is that you want to do, and how many dollars are going towards your future. And I start, making sure you're putting some money towards your future, whether that's in the form of Bitcoin, whether it's in the form of, your 401k, or I don't know what they use in Australia, but, your retirement account and different stuff like that. I think it's really important to, to start putting some money aside, because you have time on your side, which is compound interest, whether it's Bitcoin or the stock market. The longer you're in it, the more it's going to grow. And so you want to make sure you're doing that. We have, but also, Ken, I was going to say, we have a link below. So if you would like to book a more detailed conversation, we have complimentary calls. I love to hop on a call with you, help you workshop some stuff, and also appreciate your support
Yes,
on
thank you
coming
so
to the
much.
live second week in a row. So yes, so
Yeah,
hit the
shout
link.
out to
There's going to
Ken.
be a link below. Feel free to book. We can work out a time and connect and just kind of talk through some stuff, give you some strategy, get you on deck.
Yeah, absolutely. My other idea was to that there's a lot of free resources out there. Like, we use investing calculators a lot. And Princess, I see your comment. I'm going to get to you in a minute, so don't hang with us, okay? Um, and and some of that can help kind of project it out. So if you know how much you need to spend each year, well, we're the same. We don't want to eat noodles either every day.
1,000%.
So it's like, how can we even project out what you might want or need in retirement to sustain that in terms of like an actual dollar amount, so we can look forward in that way too. So again, thanks for your support, Ken. I know you're on your way to work over there
Yes,
in
and happy
Australia.
Monday, and I hope you have an awesome day. But
Yes.
feel free to use the link. I would love to connect with you and work through and workshop some, some finance strategy, because we don't
Yeah.
want you to eat noodles either, because those things really aren't healthy for you.
I'll send it in the chat right now. Just give me a second here. When I was 45, I had wanted to retire by 50. I'm about to be 49, still living paycheck to paycheck. Any advice aside from shifting my retirement plans?
Um, I think this is also something to get kind of like the same thing that we just said here. That I think, feel like we're starting off, this would be a budgeting question. I'd be curious to review the expenses, like, what are the hard fixed expenses that you have that you spend on each month, and what's the level of miscellaneous that you have left over. So I think you may or may not have heard what I just said prior to Ken, is like, calculate what are the things that have to be paid each month, like, not Amazon, but what are the hardcore expenses, and then After that, subtract your income from that, and that's your amount of miscellaneous. And then where is the miscellaneous money going, if there's any there? I think I would first start there. I mean, unfortunately, since you're check to check, depending on if you've have put some money into a retirement account, I don't know if maybe retiring by 50, it doesn't sound like it's probably attainable just yet, but I do think that you could quickly get on the road to making it attainable. But I just think, we need to just kind of really get clear on the outflows and the inflows, because one thing about retirement, once you step away from that job, especially if, depending on if you have a pension or a retirement account, at that point, you're living on a fixed income, and there's a little bit less flexibility. When you are working, you can do overtime. There's a bunch of different stuff. But once you start, drawing down your retirement resources, it gets a little bit more complicated, and nobody really wants to retire and then come out of retirement and go back to work. So I think it's really important to get it right the first time. We also have that same link that we was
Yeah.
telling Ken about for you too. So if you would like to book a complimentary call as well, we would love to connect with you, and really, we can kind of take a bit of a dive into your finances and just kind of workshop a few problems to help you get on the road to retiring. And who knows, maybe 55 is your new number. Maybe 51 is, I don't know. We'll have to look at it and see.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would just say is, like, without kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of your details, it would be hard to give super clear advice. But I think, again, starting with the budget, and I can link the budget basics YouTube video in here. It's a very simple 8-minute tactical video to kind of help you sort out a budget and get clear on what it is you're spending and what you're saving, and how much you may need for retirement as well. Thanks for the
Yeah.
question.
I
Appreciate
just
you,
want to,
Princess, for joining us.
yes, and I just want to encourage everyone. Unfortunately, what we're talking about, what we teach at Steady Worth, this stuff should have been taught in grade school. But it wasn't. And so it's like, I just want to encourage you, don't feel bad. Like, yes, there's nothing wrong with you, but unfortunately we just weren't given the information. We were taught about a bunch of history, and some stuff we did need and some stuff we didn't need. But the things that we needed the most, as far as, credit, how to manage, how to build a great budget, how to manage our finances, we weren't taught that stuff. And so obviously that gives me a great job and a topics to talk about on YouTube every Sunday with Sundays with Steadyworth. But I just want to encourage you that if you're having problems with your finances, you're not the only one, and there is life. We can get through this, and you can still build financial freedom for yourself, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just put in Princess. She said thank you. She'll be hopping on a call ASAP. It would be great, and we can't wait to meet you in person. That would be awesome. And if you have any trouble with the link, just let us know in the chat, but it should be there for you. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah. Yeah, I want to wish everyone a happy Sunday, happy Monday to Ken, who's joining us from Australia. He's living in the future, and
Yes.
so
Yeah, and he said
our government retirement.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you can see it. I didn't know you could see it. Yeah.
Hey, it says, I'm running two screens over here, so I'm actually running
Okay,
it
got it.
separate. So our government retirement is a 401, is only available at 67 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I think, what we would talk about is, like if you're it would be just like, in America, when you're putting into those plans, it's your money. So even though you can't technically start taking the money without being penalized before age 59 and a half is how it works in America, you could still like roll it over into another company and start accessing some of it. And so that's one of those things that's like, if you're trying to retire prior to 59 and a half in America, you have to actually make sure you have money that's not in a retirement plan that you're drawing from, because if you start pulling money from it too soon, prior to 59 and a half, you'll incur a 10% penalty. And plus, all of the income is taxable. So we would have to, but when we hop on the call, we'll talk about the plan that you guys have, and look at, and just look into what the rules are for it. And just also, and that's another thing that, we help people with, this come up with a strategy. When we're talking about financial freedom, there's a young man I'm working with right now, and he's early 20s. And I said, hey man, we don't want to put all of your money in, because he said somebody told him about, hey, I want to open up a Roth IRA. So that was the first thing he asked. Is like, Roth IRA is an excellent retirement account in the United States. You put money it's capped at about like 6,500 a year that you could put in, but you put money in it and you pay the taxes on it going in. It gets to grow tax free. And as long as you're 59 and a half and the account's been open for 5 years, you can pull out and you don't pay any more taxes on the earnings. So you can have that money growing from age, whatever time you started it all the way to 59 and a half. But I just told him, I said, hey man, as somebody who's in your 20s, you don't want to put all of your money, all of your investment money in a Roth IRA, just because what happens if in 3 years you decide, hey, I want to start a business, or I want to go live abroad for a while, or I want to do whatever, then now we have all this money that's locked up in this Roth IRA that it has rules about taking it out. Whereas it's okay to put some in your retirement account for sure. You definitely do want to contribute to it, but you may want to look at like a traditional brokerage account that will give you a lot more flexibility right now, especially as you're figuring out some things you want to do. And so these are things we talk about is that, there's multiple different types of investment accounts, and, what is the right strategy so that people are contributing to the accounts in proportion in a way that's going to help them achieve their goals. But that's why it's so important to get clear on the goals. I think, and I'm going to end with this last point on the same thing, which, like I said, when I was working to get clear on my goals to start Steadyworth and leave my job, I stopped contributing to my retirement account for that season. I stopped putting money in my regular brokerage account for that season, because the most important thing when I quit my job was to have cash to pay my bills and to do the other things that I needed to do. So at that point, according to my goal plan, I needed to have cash on hand. It was more valuable than having it in my retirement account or in my brokerage account. Whereas now I'm in a different season. So I'm working to put money in my retirement account and in my brokerage account and other investment things, because the season has changed. So once you get clear on your goals, then we start trying to position the money in a way that's going to support those goals best we can.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we still, I think financial freedom and it sounds like retirement are still really strongly connected for people. And I think that's great. And I would encourage you guys to think about what your current situation is right now, and what ways you can kind of organize your time, your money, and the flexibility that you do have to align that more with the things that you really care about and you really value. I think that's really important because it makes the process of building that financial freedom, preparing for retirement, all the sweeter and all the better, because you're not putting off that, hey, I really value X, Y, and Z thing, but I'm going to do that later. You're prioritizing that now as well. And so I think, as you're kind of working towards those goals, I think including more of that will be helpful as you work towards it and move closer and put your money to work. So we still have a few more viewers online. So curious if there's any other questions we can answer. It doesn't necessarily have to be about financial freedom. It could be a regular finance question if you have one, or a life question, or anything that's on your mind that's money related. Give it a few minutes, and if we are without questions, we'll close it out. But we
And
appreciate.
as always, I was going to say, if you have a topic you would like us to cover
Yes,
in a future
please.
live, please let us know. We can cover it.
We will be
So
here
yeah,
every
if there's
Sunday
a
at
topic
6.
that is like, hey, I would really love you guys to go in on this one, let us know, and we can touch on one of those topics as well.
Last week we talked about Bitcoin. The week before that we talked about budgeting. The week before that we talked about investing and building a vision for your retirement. And we talked a little bit about the market, what was going on in the market in America. So we can dive into anything that you guys want. Yes. Thank you, Princess, so much for joining. Thank you, Ken. Thank
Yes.
you, CEHD. I think that's Sade. Thank you, DK. Thank
And
you, Rachel.
yes, thank you all.
Um,
Yes, for your
we
support and
really
for
appreciate
coming.
your support and for coming. Yeah.
And we'll see you next Sunday.
We will see you next Sunday.
Have a beautiful week.
Have a beautiful week, guys.